The newest addition to my guitar collection I got for free on Craigslist. All I really had to do was drive out into the middle of nowhere to get it. It's not an Alvarez, but it comes with a great Alvarez case. It's totally sturdy, except the outer covering is peeling off pretty bad. You gotta love this rusty copper crushed velvet lining though. The guitar itself is Oscar Schmidt, and it has Washburn electronics. It's made in China, but it's nice and pretty. It has pretty good tuners. The finish is cool. It's not flat black. It's kind of a crushed pearl, sparkly if you look closely. It's got really high action on the upper frets. The most common thing that happens with cheaper, older acoustic guitars. You get the belly kind of lifting up. You get a little bit of warping in the neck. Then you got either the action super high, or it's buzzy, and or it's really uncomfortable to play. Fortunately, I think I know just what it takes to get this old guitar playing great again. As I'm getting a feel for the truss rod, so I'm going to set it generally in the middle, but instead of just adjusting the truss rod and the saddle to try and get the action better, I'm going to go ahead and remove the frets, plane down the neck, re-radius it, put the frets back on, level the frets, crown the frets, roll the edges, and then polish the frets to get this guitar playing as good as it possibly can. Then I'm going to adjust the saddle and probably take a look at the electronics too. I've got my soldering iron warming up over there just in case the frets are hard to remove. I'm hoping it won't be necessary to warm them up. So first I'm going all the way across on both sides, just lifting up the edges a tiny bit. Lift up each portion of the fret a little bit at a time. Since I will be re-radiusing the fretboard, as long as I don't make any big gashes or take out any big chips, I don't have to worry about scratches right now. Well, at least that one came out really clean. Want to keep the frets in order, put them in a little fret holder. Try not to bend up the fret while you're removing it, because it can be kind of a pain to try and bend it back into shape. It's much easier to remove the frets that are away from the body. Like a lot of things about fixing guitars, this is not that hard to do, but it really takes patience, focus, and time. Be careful. All coming out real nice and smooth. I'm going to remove the nut with the razor blade. Okay, that just snapped open. Now it's kind of just stuck in the groove. Just using the radius block should get it totally straight, planed, and evenly radiused. Now to get the fretboard as evenly radiused as possible, I'm going to scribble all over it with a pencil. And now sand off the pencil. So it's a little harder to remove the pencil from the sides, up at the top, and near the nut. So it seems like there's a little bit of an S bow around the 5th fret. That'll be gone now. Going back in with a pencil again. So I'm just using a regular pencil eraser to help remove some of the stuff that's stuck to the sandpaper. After I've got it to where the pencil mark gets uniformly removed, and I know it's straight and evenly radiused, to make it just at the action nice and low with no buzzing. So if I draw pencil marks on here now, I just go over it once or twice and they're all totally removed. I know it's nice and even. Time to put the frets back on. I've got all the fret slots nicely cleaned out with a little pocket knife. I'll hold my fret with the pliers, and give it just the gentlest bend on one side, then on the other side, then a little closer to the middle. You want it to be just a little more curved than the radius of the fretboard. Next, I center the fret so that there's just a little bit of the binding, so that you can see just a little bit of binding sticking out from either edge. Tap in one end, tap in the other end, make sure it's still straight, and then kind of flatten it out. The most important thing is to make sure that both of the ends are flush against the fretboard. If there's any minor imperfections in the dome, that'll be taken care of when I level the frets. If it's not possible to get the frets all the way back in, or to get them to sit flush against the fretboard, then you'll have to resaw the fret slots and also probably add some glue. Fortunately, I don't have to do that on this guitar. Now I've got all the frets back in, and it's time to get to the leveling. The edges aren't too bad, but I still want to just make a quick pass, and this would be the time to put tape over the fretboard, but I'm not too worried about making any mistakes. But I am going to be pretty careful while applying marker to the frets. First, I'm just going to make a rough pass. The frets are surprisingly level already. See, this guy's a little too low. Looks like these 3 frets, so they're a tiny bit taller, but it's already almost leveled. Now I'm going to put the nut back in and then have like a minimum amount of glue. So testing out playing the guitar a little bit, the frets are level enough to find the right bridge height, and then put the final touches on the leveling after I've got the right bridge. Over the years, I've collected a bunch of different bridges. Sometimes I might use like a popsicle stick or something, sand it down to exactly the height I want, and then copy that height onto the real bridge. Now I've got the strings loosened all the way so I can put marker on the frets, but I'm not going to remove the strings because now that I have the frets marked and I have the spacer in place, I'm going to level the frets with the strings on while it's in tune. Then I take the part with the sandpaper and slide it underneath there, and then just slowly level the frets as normal. All the frets are nice and level. I'll vacuum off the metal dust and then give it a little test run.
Playing good. Playing good. But I still gotta crown the frets.
Now the frets are leveled. I've got them marked up again here. Even though it looks really cool and pretty with the red marker all over it, It's time to do the crowning with this curved file. I don't want to take any material directly off the top of the fret. You can see there's a very thin red line remaining on the top of the fret, surrounded by two very thin, shiny brass lines. I just need to do that to all the frets. After I got everything crowned, I go back in with a fret file and just roll the fret ends, but I just give each one a little scrape, and then I go back through. If there's anything that catches whatsoever, just smooth it out. Try to make the ends look like a semi-sphere, like a ball bearing kinda, matching the curve of the file. Fret ends rolled. Time to take some super fine grain sandpaper. Just look for anything that catches. Get it nice and smooth. For the final finish, I use super fine grade steel wool. This will definitely catch if there's any snags. It's not a bad idea to do this outside because you are going to get steel dust everywhere. So I've done the final finish on the fretboard. Now's the time to go in and polish the frets. Going along the length of the fret till it's just smooth and glassy and shiny. I've got the fret ends as smooth as can be. Action at the 12th fret on the low E is about 6/64, and it's about an even 4/64 on the high E. I'd call that about perfect. Finally getting near done. The next thing I want to do is set the height of the nut slots. The action's a little too high over the first fret. When you're deciding how much to file down the nut slots, a good rule of thumb is that see where the action's at over the second fret, and then file down the nut slot to make that about the same or a little bit more action on the first fret. I thought the height of the low E string was pretty good, so I don't want to take it down too much. But I do want to make sure there's a good groove, a good smooth groove, and that the break action is not quite dead flat. The highest point should be on the fret side, and the lowest point of the slot on the nut should be on the side of the tuners. So very gently, just till there's a tiny bit of dust. It's easy to scratch up the headstock that way. It's possibly a little too high still, but I'll test it out before I take any more off. But now, I've got the bridge, the truss rod, the frets, and the nut all set up. I like to touch up this little chip here. The chip is right here on the corner, so I want to make sure I do not cover that with tape, and that I get the tape stuck really well right up to the edge of the chip. I'm going to paint over the crack with some acrylic paint. Finally, I think the last thing to do for this Oscar Schmidt guitar is actually repair the case that I have for it.